In chatting with the MHSA and them saying that their longtime lawyer was retiring, they said that way back in the day, they were either one of your first or the first clients that you picked up, which we're sorry for, obviously. But how did that all come about?
Well, that's true. At the time, the High School Association was represented by my longtime law firm, Goff Shanahan, and my first day with the firm was the first business day of 1980. And when I came into the office, the first file that was on my desk was an injunction hearing, so that's where it started.
When you got into this, did you expect that it would be representing something like that, an organization like that, as opposed to individuals, at least at the time?
No, I don't suppose I had any thoughts one way or the other. Representing the High School Association has certainly been a pleasure and a privilege, and I was just in the right place at the right time, so I feel lucky for having the opportunity.
In chatting before we started recording, you said it was maybe more challenging back then. There was more to it back then. Can you elaborate a little bit on why that would be?
Yeah, more challenging might not be the right word. We were certainly in court a lot more often then. And I think over time what's happened is the High School Association has paid attention, accommodated its rules to a lot of the situations that used to take us into court, and I think, like the rest of society, is probably more sensitive to the role of the courts and things. So most of the things that used to take me in court are now resolved at the board level. On the other side of it, when we are in court, there's usually a lot more at stake. Used to be we were just arguing over whether somebody could play volleyball, and now that the low-hanging fruit has all been decided, we're usually talking about the fundamental powers of the High School Association and their right to exist and things like that. So less cases, more pressure.
What were some of those unique things that you had to help the Montana High School Association out with, the topics of a male wanting to play volleyball or something along those lines?
Sure, there was a few along the way. In the 80s, the so-called Ridgeway case, Montana turned out to be on the cutting edge of the whole idea of Title IX and equity in sports, so that litigation went on for years, and for a long time was, when it was settled, it was a template for the rest of the country. So sex equity was certainly one big one. Disabilities law, also in the 80s, there was federal legislation protecting the disabled, and that rolled over on into sports, so we had a whole decade or so of cases trying to hammer out what accommodations had to be made for the learning disabled or physically disabled, yeah. So, and most of those have worked their way through the system now.
I know Joe Austin recently retired up there as well, but the Title IX and the equity and stuff was a huge part of what she was involved in and stuff like that. Can you believe that it's come from where it was then to now, where we're seeing all these, and like we're talking about with wrestling, these girls are going and placing on the podium, and you look at the basketball and going off to college, in-state and out-of-state. I mean, the opportunities that they have now are certainly different than it was back then.
Oh, certainly, and all for the best. I even look back at my own attitudes back in the 80s about what was fair and unfair, and can't believe, you know, some of the positions that I held at the time. So in terms of the future, nothing would surprise me. I mean, it's an evolution, and we'll just see where it goes, yeah.
You've been the representative, but they've passed Jim Haugen, Joe Austin, now Mark Beckman, Brian. You've been the mainstay. They've been the ones cycling in and out over there at the MHSA. Is it tough to keep up with who's in the building?
Yeah, I outlived them all. From my experience, the High School Association has been blessed with a pretty steady hand at the at the keel all these years. Joe Austin, to drop her name, is certainly one of the experts in sex equity in this country. Jim Haugen, Mark Beckman, I mean, the association's just been fortunate to have them. Yeah.
38 years, 39 years now later, the retiring. Sigh of relief?
No. Well, yeah, I'm happy to get out of the business, but I'll miss the High School Association. It's, like I said, it's been a privilege.
The big awards ceremony coming up, obviously, and
I hate to hear you say big. This was just supposed to be a little something in the mail saying thank you.
That's not the case. As you're going to find out on Monday, that's not exactly the case. But when they told you, I mean, they're not telling anybody else. People are going to show up Monday and find out that they won an award. But when Mark, called and said, "Hey, we want you to come down to Butte and honor all of the work that you've done for us," I mean, does it get better than having the people that you've represented over these years for 4 decades want to make sure that you get honored in a way like that?
No, it doesn't get any better than that. It's always nice to be recognized, but particularly so when you're recognized by an organization I have so much respect for. Yeah, it's a great honor.
Where's retirement taking us?
Maxville.
For people that don't know where that is.
Right by Phillipsburg.
And what are some of the plans, I guess? I mean, is it fishing, hiking, hunting, or sitting on the chair?
None of those things. Plenty of projects to do around the property. My wife and I will do some traveling. So, yeah, well, we'll just play it by ear. And, I'd like to stay involved with high school athletics, and probably will. It's mostly spectating these days, but I was just blessed with a great appreciation for extracurricular activities, athletics in particular. My abilities were modest, but I certainly enjoyed it, and I'll stay involved any way I can.
Well, I was going to ask, what were some of those sports that you played growing up?
I played them all of them on a mediocre level.